Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening. Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I'm a licensed nutritionist, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
Hi, this is Dr. Mike T. Nelson, owner of Extreme Human Performance, creator of the Flex Diet certification, instructor at Rocky Mountain University, and faculty member of the Carrig Institute.
All right, everyone, we're going to break the fourth wall a little here and just share. We're having terrible connection problems with Skype this morning, so we're going to probably sort of go over to Phil for a separate audio segment because, you know, he's ready to answer some questions and that sort of thing. There was one listener question, very specific, I think, and we can chime in, but really it's best for Phil to answer. So after we do a little bit of news and mail, we'll sort of work our way over to Phil and say, you know, what do you think about this? Just so we can get a little Coach Stevens in on this. So lots of mail this week and some news. The news kind of takes a journalism slant, and it sort of precipitated our topic, which is going to be BS that we see in fitness journalism, essentially. Like, what is it that you see in some of these articles, and whether it's a muscle magazine or more Gen Pop media, what kind of BS stuff? It's just kind of a light topic. It's a little salty maybe, but it's just discussion. You know, it's not so much instructive, and then you guys, as listeners, of course, everybody can just determine if you feel the same way or not. But first with some news.
Strength and muscle sport news.
This first one is just very brief. It's from, we often get contacted by other podcasters and like what used to be called a podcatcher, you know, like apps that help you find your podcasts. But this is from one called Potable, and I'm not here to advertise them, but just to share a statistic at the beginning of this. It says, if you haven't heard, podcasting is exploding with over 40 million Americans listening to an average of 5 episodes a week.
Wow.
It's the age of personalized radio where you can listen to any topic that tickles your fancy. And then they go on about why their little app is best. And, of course, we're set up through Stitcher. iTunes is still our major, you know, distribution channel. But there's a lot. We're hooked up through some type of Google Audio. I don't even know what that one is called. And like I said, this one's Potable. But this really echoes something that Dr. Cordero we had on recently. She's the writing professor. She was saying that too, that we're in this just explosion of podcasts, and I don't know. I feel like saying, well, we were the cool kids first.
Yeah, because it seems like everyone and their brother has a podcast now, and I'm sure it's like back when, you know, having a blog was the in thing, and it's cool. I mean, you can get a lot more information sooner, which is great, but like you said, a lot of them start out great and then they just kind of disappear.
Yeah. Some of them have video components and great like production values, and I can always, I kind of, you know, snicker like as a podcasting veteran. I'm like, that one's going to pod fade because there's too much that time is a resource. You know, it's not just money. And if it takes you 4 hours to edit and prep a show, that's not going to continue probably if you have a real job. You know,
yeah.
So.
Definitely a lot more effort to keep that up.
And some of them are just so stupid. I was looking at different podcasts the other day. I mean, they have ones about people who kick, like, as part of their job. If you're a swimmer or you're a karate instructor or you're in football, it's just about kicking, the whole thing. One's about decorating with frogs. I'm like, what? What? Anyway, at least for our purposes, right, we have a community that, of course I'm biased, but makes sense. So... okay, so I just thought I would share that. Podcasting is enormous, and I didn't realize 5 episodes a week, but that does reflect what I think you and I do, Mike. We listen to podcasts in different genres, you know. And
yeah. If I come to your house and I see lots of frogs, I know what you've been listening to.
That's right. That's right. Okay, here is a question from Jennifer, longtime listener. Are there any specific brands you would recommend for essentially joint supplements? Glucosamine, chondroitin, MSM. Are there benefits to taking liquid over pill form? It seems like you've talked about this on Iron Radio, but I couldn't recall which episode. And Mike, I know that you're pretty well read on things like different different versions of mineral supplements and that kind of thing. I tend to just go to Sam's Club when it comes to like glucosamine, chondroitin. My current one does, in fact, also have MSM in it. But do you have any thoughts about preferred joint sups?
Yeah, I mean, usually I look at their base diet, right? Is their inflammation super high? The direct data is so-so on fish oil, but I'll look at their essential fatty acids and run like a at-home test to see if those are really screwy, because their inflammation might just be super high, which is exacerbating it.
Yeah.
From a mechanic side, are the right muscles doing the right job that are kind of around the joint? Is there something you can do with exercise, to kind of help that? Then in terms of specific supplements, I played around with a couple over the years. The better experiments I've done actually, micronutrition, just from eating as many veggies as you can, usually seems to make a big difference, even without getting fancy and adding turmeric and ginger and other kind of anti-inflammatory compounds.
Yep.
I've had mixed results with glucosamine, chondroitin. Usually the dose is like the standard 1,500 milligram, 1,200 milligram. I have used one from a company called GLC, and they make one called Actistatin. At the time when I got it, they only had the equine version out, but it was the same as the human version they're developing, so I bought the equine version.
Okay.
So I had like a pound of it in my cupboard with this big horse on
Right.
it, which there was nothing illegal, and it was just over the counter,
right.
But you can only get it from your vet at that time. But they have the human version now. I've had pretty good luck with that. The GLC, the specific chondroitin they use, seems to help a little bit more. So I'll have clients take that for around 2 weeks, and usually most of the time they notice a benefit at the end of that. And then our buddy Sean Casey has one too through his company. I'm just pulling it up here that he sent me a sample that was pretty good. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. But if you look under Dietetic Advantage, they had one that just joint supplement. And then, I kind of like that one. That seemed to work pretty good.
Yeah.
You could probably get him on here at some point to tell us more about all the details behind it. But I also know that he does a lot of research into everything too, and he's not just going to come out with something that looks cool either.
No, right, yeah. It always helps to have somebody formulating the product that actually has some nutrition or science background.
Right.
I just grabbed mine. This is just a member's mark from Sam's Club, and I know it's not ideal, but it says compared to Osteo Biflex. That's what I would consider overpriced main one that you often see. It's 1,500 milligram of glucosamine, 1103 milligram of chondroitin MSM complex. And then they throw in a couple of other things, just like a low dose 60 milligram vitamin C and stuff like that. I will say this is not very scientific, and Jennifer, this is just my perception, but since, I don't know what it was, last summer, I kind of blew out my left knee going for a run, and there's no doubt that now I'm not a physician, but I tore my medial meniscus. I mean, everything was classic. I talked to a couple of medical professionals about it. They're like, yeah, that's what you did. And my options would be either try to string it along until I need to get some of that cut away. The thing is, without any kind of imaging, I don't know, is it like a bucket handle tear? There's lots of severities of how that tears. But when I take a combination of this just, discount club glucosamine, chondroitin, MSM, and I take 4 triple strength fish oils every morning. And then I like the double and triple strength, of course, because you're going for the active ingredient, right? I want high dose EPA, DHA. And then, there's 2 different kinds of curcumin that I get off of Amazon, and they're supposed to have better bioavailability. One of them is more like through a lipid mechanism, and the other one I can't even remember, but they're supposed to be a little bit more bioavailable because, of course, that's one of the issues with that. I will say this. When I'm steady with all those things, my left knee doesn't hurt. And when I'm not steady with those things, that old pain comes back. So, like to your point, I mean, part of this is I'm trying to sneak in the building blocks, essentially, with the glucosamine, chondroitin. Just, I figure over time, if there's even a minuscule amount of that in my joint itself, it's going to slosh around and maybe deposit. I don't know. It's not very, but we both know that's not a very vascular area, and so I'm just hoping to kind of get that saturated in my tissues a little. But then, like I said, their curcumin products I think do help in the fish oil with the inflammation. And if I stop those, I've actually had people say, you're limping. I'm like, yeah, I know. So,
the curcumin you're using, was that Mariva?
One of them is.
Yeah. Do you like that?
Well, there was two of them, and I'd have to go grab them. They're both in my cupboards. Maybe we'll do a deeper dive in the future.
Yeah.
I mentioned it on a show recently, but of course, we've been doing this for like a decade, so we're going to start measuring in decades. But but I'm just going for things that, because of the known bioavailability, and I even pulled some papers, and we discussed it about a year or maybe even a year and a half ago on IronRadio, because in the advanced nutrition class, I had a couple of students very interested. We have a section on phytochemicals, and, you get things like resveratrol and curcumin, and you know this as well or better than I do. The bioavailability is just suspect. If only we could get it in, get that absorption and get it to the tissue of interest kind of thing. So I thought, it's sure not going to hurt, and I actually think it helps because, like I said, my knee doesn't hurt, and I don't know if it's because it's the analgesia or the anti-inflammation, or maybe I am supplying a few building blocks in there for the cartilage to do its thing, and not split any further. I don't know. In my mind, that's what I'm hoping for, because I've heard that, when they go in there, I spoke to a friend of mine who's an athletic trainer, and she herself had a medial meniscus tear, and she's like, I just tolerated as much as I could. Then essentially I had them cut away because there's the classic clicking, from this sort of thing, and cut it away. And then when they do that, they basically say the bone is more exposed, and eventually you're going to need a total knee replacement. You might get 10 years or this or that. And I'm like, well, I'm going to put this off as much as I can. Anyway, so Jennifer, I hope that helps a little with some doses, a couple of brands for you.
Sean's supplement if you go to Dietetic Advantage, it's JNT-2.
Gotcha.
Joint and Nutrition T-2. So, it's MSM and a specific form of cartilage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, Kayla, IronRadio intern, she tells me that Sean he's having some sales on some things. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't want to make it a commercial, but no, good stuff. And like I said, if you look at the literature, clinically, I think, you'll talk to physicians, or if you look at the literature, these things are not solid gold. There seems to be a nutrigenetic thing with some of this glucosamine chondroitin response as far as clinical benefits. And that's why I always I get my triple strength fish oils from Sam's Club and whatnot. So at least that's how I do that. Probably not ideal, but just realistic. Next, this is the question that I want to get some audio clip from Phil about. This is from Arturo. He says, hi, guys. I don't know if this is the correct way to email the show. I've been listening for years and just became a supporting member. I really appreciate what you have done over the years. Anyway, here are my questions. So I'm going to pose this one to you, Mike, and then we'll go to Phil. I have seen many twice-a-week programs, and I'm a little reluctant to go that route, even though there are many times I barely have time to get to the gym. So I think he literally means twice a week and not the same body part twice in a week.
So it's twice a week lifting.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. He says, I'm not a big guy, 5'5", 178 pounds. My strength is mediocre, 250 bench, 310 deadlift, 185 squat. My squat sucks because of lingering injuries to my back and knees over the last couple of years. I've only been training for strength a couple years now, even though I have lifted on and off since my teens, and I am 52 now. So he's a little bit older than I am. My back and knees are the healthiest they've been in years, and even though I'm chomping at the bit to push it, I also don't want to overdo it and injure myself again. Is training twice a week really effective? I've done everything from starting strength, 5-3-1. I tend to gravitate towards strength templates over bodybuilding templates. It says there are many resources that claim older lifters should work out less, perhaps twice a week. What has been your experience? All right, Mike, you first.
Yeah, that actually fits with pretty much what I'm doing right now. So I'm actually only lifting formally most weeks only twice a week. The other times I'm actually, since 3.5 months ago, I've been working more on cardiovascular stuff, doing more rowing, doing some more low intensity stuff. I'm doing some functional neurology stuff for my eyes. So I wanted to get my cardiovascular capability back up. My aerobic base was kind of low. So I'm doing upper body like on a Monday or Tuesday, and then some type of lower body stuff either Friday or Saturday. So today will be lower body. And even within that, I cut back on the volume quite a bit. So on Monday, yeah, it's a little bit more on the hypertrophy side, bench, dumbbell bench, dumbbell rows, stuff like that. But max time I'm in the gym, an hour and 15. And then like today I've been alternating with safety bar squats and chin-ups and just some neck extension, maybe some easy grip stuff. And actually the upper body stuff, progress has been okay, a little bit slower. Lower body stuff, progress has actually been quite good. That may be because my lower body's been feeling better lately too. And then I also decided not to even then push that one that hard. In the past, I was also doing a broomball game during the week, which was more higher intensity.
Okay.
So, and other clients I've worked with have done similar things. I mean, I've had, some guys say, okay, I can only get to the gym Monday and Friday. I've had some clients where their Monday through Friday is just insane, and they can only get to the gym Saturday and Sunday because it's a weekend. So, yeah, I would say it sounds like with the schedule you have and with the outside stuff you have going on, I think trying to do more than that is probably going to backfire anyway. So I would say, yeah, just, consider doing a full body, maybe more upper body focused one day, maybe a little bit more full body, lower body focused the other day, squat or deadlift, something like that. Maybe more bench on the other day, press, and then just get in as much walking as you can. Even park farther away, get up a few minutes early, do a 20-minute AM walk just to get some other movement during the week. And
yeah, he does do that actually. Later in the email, he said he does a little bit of walking, hiking. Perfect. Yep.
Yeah, so I would say that's, the reality is if that's where you're at and that's the time you have, people can do pretty good with that. Is it quote unquote perfect or ideal or optimal? Yeah, probably not. But, I've had clients make pretty good progress doing that. And the reality is you can't really sometimes add more than that, or the whole thing's going to backfire and you don't want to risk injury and digging a bigger hole either.
Right. Yeah. That echoes a lot of what I've been doing as well. I mean, I probably get to the gym 3 times a week. One of the things that's really helped me is the high intensity interval stuff. I spend my first 20 minutes every time in the gym. Instead of putting it at the end, I do it at the beginning. So I'm probably only spending about 40 minutes on the weights. And sometimes I'll do heavy circuit. Like I'll go in and almost just like do an upper body, lower body split throughout the week, and I know that's more bodybuilding-ish and he's more interested in maybe some of the, power type routines, but sometimes I'll literally do whole body. I'll go in, I'll like squat, leg press. I'll just do like one basic heavy movement, overhead pressing. Like you, I do more dumbbells now because I can supinate and not irritate joints and, I still like seated cable rows. And so, yeah, I'm 3 times a week with definitely more of a cardio component. He mentioned that he's about 20% fat, maybe a little higher. So I think you could really see a lot of, again, if you're interested in muscle mass and aesthetics at all and not just strength, it really helps to unveil a little bit of your structure, your muscle mass by leaning down just a little. And not just with diet, of course, or the hikes and stuff, but yeah, I'm a huge fan over this last year and a half of the HIIT stuff. Just even on an elliptical or a bike or whatever's not bothering my knee. I think that really helps. And, and you can do heavy circuit type stuff. Circuits don't have to be on Nautilus machines with isolation movements. You could do like a bench squat row kind of circuit, and really do some good work before you leave. Even if it's just 35, 40 minutes with the weights themselves. So.
Yeah, that's what I found with like safety bar squats and shins, because if I'm doing, 5 to 7 or 8 reps on squats, it's a little bit more cardiovascular, but, a couple, weighted shins or singles up to triples on shins is easy. It's a full body thing, and there's not as much systemic recovery from that either. So I found that pairing works well. And last thing, like you were saying, if he has access to like a Concept 2 rower, just get a warm up, even if it's at the end of training, and just do one, all out 500 meter row. You're going to take you probably less than 2 minutes. And, that can be enough just to maintain some stuff in that high intensity zone for a while too. And you're talking like an extra, with warm up and everything, an extra 5 minutes, so yeah. It's not too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, part of it stems from all that stuff that we've been seeing at conferences about, turning on the right genes. A lot of things you have to do some fairly high intensity cardio type stuff. And a lot of my lifts, I would consider not so much cardio based. It might be heavier. I do negatives and stuff like that. And cause then I could try to trigger some hypertrophy and not destroy my joints any further. But so that's how I get that metabolic intensity that seems to be so helpful. And I mean, I really did. I dropped 20 pounds of fat. And
nice.
And I can just, by adding or subtracting one HIIT bout during the week, like maybe I'm doing it either 2 times a week or 3 times a week, I'm amazed at the difference in, what it does to your metabolism and your physique and stuff. So anyway. Okay, well, let's go to Phil. We'll get his input on this question and essentially anything else he would like to talk about on this ridiculous Skype tech mess that we're dealing with today.
Okay, everybody, we're having some technical difficulties on Skype. We don't know what the hell's going on, but for some reason I can't get a hold of Lonnie and Mike, who are recording right now. So I'm doing my own thing. This is Phil Stevens. I'm here. I run Strength Guild. I'm a powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, a little bit of everything else. Got some big events coming up. Everybody should look for. August 18th, we're throwing a big strength festival here in town. Lonnie might be coming out for that. We got Matt Vincent from Hate Brand Goods, and you guys all know Matt. He's been on the show a couple times. He's multi-time world champion in Highland Games. Mike Beach coming out, national champion. Big Highland Games with Pro Division, strongman competition, tug of war for some cash prizes in team and individual. What else are we doing? Some exercise racing, running a 5K. For just it's going to be like a kilted 5K. That's mainly to get people involved and just showing up at the event. There's all kinds of stuff going on all day long. So if anybody's interested in that, come on out. And I'm just going to address some things going on. I want to give a shout out to some of my ladies. I've had a couple of my women at the gym went for new PRs last night after a pretty intense 6-week training program, and they both went over the 20-pound mark on their squats, increased in 6 weeks. So Gina crossed the 315 barrier for the first time. She crushed 315, went 325, got it too. And then Allison, who's just done one meet, and she's already at 275. It's just pretty amazing how we've got some strong women coming up, and the new baseline at the gym now is like 315. So that's pretty amazing. I'm just glad my kids get to grow up around just strong, men and women all the time. So it's amazing. Congrats to those ladies. I want to address a couple listener questions today. We had one on the site that I kind of touched on briefly, and I was going to give it a little more thought here. But Michael asked about having 1 to 2 days of very low calorie days, bordering on protein sparing modified fast, and then eating maintenance or hair under the rest of the week, as opposed to straight daily deficit. Mentally, it's just easier for him to dial it in 1 to 2 days and have a little more freedom the other days. He's looking to go from about 20% body fat to 15, or 15 to 20 pounds over the course of 5 to 6 months. He says, I mean, a deficit is a deficit, right? Especially at this higher body fat level. I agree. I mean, when I was cutting down, I did some of these, and I've done some in the past. I mean, I think at some point I reach a point where I just don't want to go down and eat less on a daily basis. So like he said, it's mentally easier where if I have one day, maybe 2 days where I eat very little, and that can be easy for me because I get super busy. So I'm one of those weird people that like I'll come down here and get to working in my office, and like 3 o'clock in the afternoon rolls around and I realize I haven't eaten anything. But and that's odd for me because normally I like the first thing I do is wake up and eat. But if I get busy, I get that way. But anyways, it's you're right, and at some point it is, you can start looking at weekly caloric expenditure or caloric intake versus daily. So if you're in a deficit over the long haul, then of course, I mean, it's much like training. You don't need to, I hate people to look at a daily volume. Let's look at what you did over weeks, over months, and things like that, and that's what adds up to real progress. So yeah, if 1 to 2 days, give it a shot. And I like the whole protein sparing thing, where we just get a little protein in during the days. It's very low impact. Usually if it's just protein, it could be fairly low calories. Let's say you get 200 grams of protein in, you're still only taking in about 800 calories. That's pretty freaking low for somebody who trains. And then you got some amino acids floating around, things like that. But and it just gives you something to eat. So yeah, I mean, I'd give that a shot. I used it with luck when I was getting down, and then I didn't have to drop my daily calories any lower. I could just have 1 to 2 days of those. I started off with 1, and then maybe towards the end I added 2 to get down lighter. So yeah, give it a shot. So our other question was some listener mail that came in. Lonnie shot it over to me, and it is from Arturo. Arturo sends us a message saying, I don't know if this is correct email, but anyways, here's the question. I have seen many twice-a-week programs, and I'm a little reluctant to go that route, even though there are many times I barely have time to get to the gym. I'm a big guy, 5 foot. I'm not a big guy. 5'5", 178. My strength level is mediocre. 250 bench, 310 deadlift, 185 squat. My squat sucks because of lingering injuries to my back and knees the last couple years. I have begun training for strength. I've only begun training for strength a couple years now. Even though I lifted on enough since my teens, I'm now 52. My back and knees are the healthiest they've been in years, and even though I'm chomping at the bit to push it, I also don't want to overdo it and injure myself again. Is training twice a week really effective? I've done everything from SS, starting strength, I'm guessing that is, to 531, and tend to gravitate towards strength over bodybuilding templates. There are many sources out there that claim older lifters should work out less, i.e. twice a week. What have been your experiences? Any advice would be appreciated. By the way, I do eat healthy, fluctuating between maintenance and slight deficit calories, as to not get overweight. I estimate my body fat percentage around 20-25. Cardio consists of daily walking, hiking on weekends, and occasionally HIIT. Our best regards, Arturo. Arturo, yes. I mean, I do have luck with this. Not only for older lifters, but some of my stronger lifters. At a point with age and with strength, you can only do so much. But it's something that I'm messing around with right now with myself with good benefits. Basically, I'm getting in most of my lifting on one day. So I'll go in today here in about an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm going to squat heavy, and then I'm going to bench, and then I'm going to deadlift heavy. And then what I do the rest of the week is I'll have 1 to 2 pickup days where I get my assistance work in. And what this is allowing me, being an older, beat-up lifter, a little more time to recover. I went back to the old standby that worked when I was 25 and 30, and was trying to go 4 days a week. Heavy squat day, heavy bench day, heavy deadlift day, heavy other press bench day. And basically I was always in a state of hurt, so none of my days were that great. I've changed to this, and my lifts are skyrocketing. I mean, I'm probably going to squat even after having a hip replacement and a hamstring repair. I'm aiming to squat more than I've ever squatted in my life, so that's a good thing. We're probably going to be getting a 750 here in April. And right now, most of that, 99% of that work is done on one day. And then I have the rest of the week to recover. I think it's a couple things, though. And you said you've been training your whole life. I think it's a lot easier to maintain as an older lifter than it is to gain, if that makes sense. So I can make these small gains training once a week, not beat myself up, a little less wear and tear on my joints and cartilage and things like that, and still make progress. And it doesn't take that much for me to maintain the last 20 some years of training. So that 1 day a week is fine, and then I get in. It's just how I'm feeling. I may walk in and say, I'm going to do some rows today, so I'll go in and hit some rows on my other days, or do a little extra bench. This week I decided I was feeling good, and I just pulled some deadlifts on Wednesday to see how that felt. I did some speed work at 500. Just things that move fast. So I don't do anything super taxing on those other days, and I push it really hard on that 1 day a week. It's kind of like almost a you could say it's almost like a meet, but it's not. I don't push it to that level in training. I have specific numbers I want to hit. Like last week, I needed to hit a 605 squat and make it easy. I hit that. I came back, did some volume, moved on to deadlift. It went pretty good. So, yeah, I think there's good evidence out there. And another book I would point you to for something on this is Purposeful Primitive by Marty Gallagher. He outlines a bunch of templates for various great lifters across the decades that he's seen or dealt with. One of them being Ed Cohn. There's some stuff in there about what's his name? I can't even think of his name. Anyways, a bunch of lifters in there that the outlines, and one of the splits is just that. It's a 1 day a week thing that some of these great lifters used, and they'd go in and push it really hard 1 day a week. And the only thing I'd change from there is, like, I do some bodybuilding stuff, just this and that during the week. Nothing that's too intensive. And I think, I think you can make progress then as an older lifter. And usually as an older lifter, if we've been doing it a while, we're a little more neurally adept, so it doesn't take as much to push things hard. And then, like I said, I'm doing this with my stronger lifters now. I'm talking guys that are squatting 800-900 pounds, deadlifting the same, and we're seeming to have good luck with that. And I think a part of that is because I'm a firm believer in that percentage is percentage. Like if I'm having my people squat 70% for a set number of reps, and 70%, but at a point, 70% of 900 is different than 70% of 225. So in the beating it does on your body and things like that. So we're finding I'm allowing them to heal and recover a bit more, and they're not as beat up. One of my big things is I don't ever want any of my lifters injured. Injury in training is just stupid. So I want to make as much progress as we can without being injured. I like building athletes for the long term. I'm not a big blaster dust guy. I'm not the person to go to if you want to go from mediocre to world level in like a year. I just don't believe in it. Too many people get beat up. The things you have to do and the things that are required to reach that kind of advancement in a year, I think is detrimental to the long term. And all the best lifters I know and have met in my career, which is many, have been long-term lifters, i.e. Ed Cohn and things like that, where it took them 10, 15, 20 years to reach their potential. So most of my people that come to me are in it for the long haul. It's like, what can we do in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years type of thing. So if you keep that in mind, I mean, you're 52, you're not dead. You could be lifting into your 70s and still making progress, I think. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at on that. And, like I said, I'm getting ready to go in and see what I can do for the week. I have specific goals set out. I'm going to probably do I'd like to squat 650 today. So we'll go from there and make that easy and keep rolling up. So I hope that helps. If you have any other follow-ups on this, just drop us a line again via email, and we will talk to you soon. Everybody have a good day. Bye.
Okay, next up, we're just wading through some things before we get to break. This is from Frank Robles. He says, I emailed you a couple of times. I was listening to your last podcast, and you mentioned coffee. I roast my own organic coffee. I make my own quote-unquote workout brew, which consists of Robusta bean mixed with Arabica bean. You may know this already, but keep in mind, darker roast has less caffeine, right? And that's what we were mentioning, right? So if you could find one like the Death Wish type stuff, it's kind of both. It's darker roast, but it's also very high caffeine. You sent me half a pound of that once, and I'm like, holy God, I can't sleep like that same night, He says, very cool of him. He says, if you would like, I could send you some samples of my coffee. Thanks for everything you guys do. Your strength brother, Frank. So that was a cool
that's
email.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, no, make no mistake. Yeah, we're down with the brew method and all that. I've been putting some Instagram posts up. In fact, we're actually doing a cool project where we're going to brew the same beans with different methods. Cold brew, vacuum brew, pour over, drip, and then we're going to instantly cryo freeze them. And then a friend of mine, Jeff, is an analytical chemist, and we're going to look at some of these compounds that might be able to either trigger a metabolic boost or antioxidant recovery. Last week we talked about coffee reducing DOMS, right, delayed onset muscle soreness. Mike, you just sent me that thing. Maybe we'll discuss next week on.
Yeah.
Apparently the caffeic acid in the coffee helps you, deposit glycogen. And who'd have thought that, right? Because it's not that unusual because we know coffee has anti-diabetic effects, but for a healthy person, some of these suggestions, we always say coffee is not just liquid caffeine. So we're going to dig into this, and I actually like to measure it. It's one thing to, you hear, the roasting burns out some of the caffeine. I want to go look at these different brew methods because if a pour over is going to get me more of these beneficial phytochemicals, then I'll hit my Chemex more often.
And I'm pretty sure that the cold brew caffeine content per volume is probably one of the highest, I think.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any direct data on that. And I've noticed a few clients have been switching more to cold brew coffee. And I don't know. I suspect their caffeine content's going up higher than I think it is. So
right. I was told that because it's so slow, the extraction, the time course and the solubility of different chemicals happens differently. Right, so you end up with potentially, and I know there's already literature on a lot of these sorts of things, but I always want to do this in the context of a pre-workout, or something specific for lifters, sort of thing. So, okay, just two more, and these set the stage for our topic of the day, which is about BS journalism when it comes to fitness. A lot of listeners know I'm always fussing about some of these quote-unquote science journalists, but this first one, and Mike, you know about this, Lou Schuler sent us something funny. He said, I thought you guys would get a kick out of this spam pitch that just came in. Lou's a notable veteran author and journalist in our industry, and he's one of the guys that I am not pointing fingers at when I critique, because he's got a good head on his shoulders. But he says the executive summary here is a guy noticed that I linked to IronRadio from my links page, and he used that as a reason to pitch me his bullshit nutrition opus. So he says, you'll see the cut and paste, you'll see what I mean. So I look down here at the bottom, and you could clearly see the insert name here aspect of this, right? So instead of hi Lou, it says Dear Ask Lou, as if that's his name. It says, my name is Joey, and I'm a writer and sports fitness advisor. Now, first of all, already the red flags are flying. When I hear stuff like, I'm a writer, I'm a consultant, I'm an advisor, I think, oh, you mean you're unemployed?
Yeah. Need money.
I was doing research on sports nutrition, just finished reading your wonderful blog post at louschuler.com. In that article, you cited a solid post that I've read in the past, ironradio.org. Now, first of all, we're a podcast. We do have a written library type thing, but you could just see that it was inserted. We're not a blog. Yeah. And then here it comes. I just finished writing a guide that is even more detailed and updated and comprehensive than that kind of thing. And I'm just like, okay, here we go. So sometimes Lou will send me stuff. Over the years, he sent me stuff about there was a company that was bastardizing some of the CLA research I did 100 years ago.
Oh, I remember that. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, and if Lou sees something like that, because he is a journalist and he's got his fingers on the pulse of this stuff, he's like, oh, look at this one, So I took the opportunity to say, Lou, let's get you back on the show. So late spring, we'll get Lou Schuler back on the show. Like I said, he's written a bunch of books, more articles than you can count. And that kind of thing. So, and he's funny. So,
yeah, and he's one of the the very first journalist, I believe, in fitness that went back and got his NSCA CSCS. I mean, now I know that's kind of more common for a lot of younger journalists, but he was one of the first people to go back and I think just do a very deep dive into fitness and to get certified, even though his training and everything is actually being a journalist. So I thought that was super impressive.
Definitely. Yeah. You have to almost be hybrid in a sense, or you can't, what you're writing about, you don't understand, right? This next one maybe is case in point. This is from CNN. Coffee may come with a cancer warning in California. So some of the listeners may have heard this. This is by Jen Christensen at CNN. California coffee shops may soon be forced to warn customers about a possible cancer risk in their morning jolt of Java. The state keeps a list of chemicals it considers possible causes of cancer, and one of them, acrylamide, is created when coffee beans are roasted. Now, anybody who knows the coffee literature knows that it's got very strong anti-carcinogenic effects. Oral cancer goes down, apparently even in smokers, which is unusual. And I'm not going to go reference all of these things, but I am reasonably well read on the coffee and health literature. It's sort of what I do. And to suggest that one of these chemicals, there's a causality confusion going on. So it says, research has shown that coffee does provide health benefits, including lowering your risk of early death, reducing heart disease, multiple sclerosis, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, and some cancers, including melanoma and prostate cancer. Now, this article does point out that there was a branch of the World Health Organization that says that very hot beverages could be carcinogenic. And so that's a different ball of wax, right? If you're repeatedly injuring and burning your throat, then repeat injury can induce some tissue damage and maybe even carcinogenesis. But that's not what we're talking about here.
That's on the thermal side, right? That's not because of the compound.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So she kind of tosses that out. But again, you could do that with hot anything, It says the science on human exposure to acrylamide still needs future studies, according to a 2014 review in the Journal of Nutrition and Cancer. In addition to coffee, acrylamide can be found in potatoes, baked goods, crackers, bread, cookies, breakfast cereal, canned black olives, prune juice, and that it says its presence is not always labeled. And again, to me is, okay, so let's say this chemical has some indirect connection to cancer, but if we know that coffee as a matrix doesn't cause cancer, in fact reduces it, then what are we fussing about, right?
Yeah.
Because the ultimate outcome is that it's reducing risk. It says humans are also thought to absorb acrylamide at different rates and metabolize it differently than rodents. It says the Food and Drug Administration website says we're still in the information gathering stage. So again, this author, I think to her credit, she is saying, there doesn't seem to be that much going on with this. But again, the article is purposely attention grabbing, right? Which is, coffee causes cancer according to the state of California, or may cause cancer. Starbucks referred any questions to the National Coffee Association, which is smart of them. Bill Murray, the association's president and CEO, said in a statement, quote, coffee has been shown over and over again to be a healthy beverage. The U.S. government's own dietary guidelines state that coffee can be part of a healthy lifestyle. So, again, what I didn't care for was this title, Coffee May Come with a Cancer Warning, and that kind of thing, where like I said, the link to it. Now, maybe this is just politics, stupidity among lawmakers. Maybe it's that. Maybe they just want to point out to people that chemical is in there. But to me, this article spins it with a title like Coffee May Have a Cancer Warning in California. And, like I said, purposely inflammatory. And, I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff. So.
And as you mentioned, coffee is probably the one thing most Americans consume that has great anti-carcinogenic properties.
Right. Yes. It's
also
also
all the other things they could eat.
Yep. Number one source of antioxidants. It's not fruits and vegetables. It's coffee.
Yeah. Yep.
So, so that kind of thing. Like I said, maybe if she would have spun that more about, the blunder of lawmakers in that way. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to just defend coffee. If there's something about acrylamide that's really going to cause a problem, fine. But then the studies, the epidemiology, and even the experimental models would show that coffee is causing mouth cancer or throat cancer or some cancer, and they really don't. Like we were saying, it kind of shows the opposite. So why are you bringing this up? This should be more about blunders of lawmakers in California instead of a title like, possible cancer connection with coffee, because that's just, shameless attention grabbing, I think. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think California has some very interesting laws in that area. Like if you go to the airport, I remember going to a retreat or some health event. I was out there and I'm sitting in LAX looking at the sign basically stating that where I'm sitting may be cancer causing, and there's interesting ways everything has to be reported also.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about journalism. I mean, from Lou Schuler's bit to the CNN piece. I mean, there's a lot of things, and we've ripped on some of this before, but we're going to take maybe a more of a microscope to fitness mags, muscle mags, things like that as well. Hey, listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle. Oh, you poor meathead. All that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You can simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that. And I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book. But that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, we're back from break. It's Dr. Mike T. Nelson, Dr. Lonnie Lowry, and we're talking about fitness journalism today. And Lonnie said he's got a good one to lead us off with.
Yeah, there's actually here's a list. Things that I've seen in muscle mags or just science journalism over the years that sort of makes me roll my eyes. And then I'm sure as I go down this list, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, totally. But so one would be like, I guess the classic one that it doesn't really work on adults as much, I would hope, but is the classic, model holding the product. You get somebody who's chemically enhanced and they're holding up a bottle of protein powder or something like that. And this still happens to this day, so somebody, it must be working with somebody. It's like, you get obviously a jacked pro bodybuilder holding a bottle of something as if, and sometimes he'll even come out and say, I use this. Fine, maybe you do. They give it to you free, but this is not valid. This is not why you look like that. So that's the kind of classic thing. One of the things I think was very funny that they did at Muscle Mag International, and I don't know if companies still do this or not, but they would attack fake products. I don't know if you remember this, but
because that was a long time ago, right?
Right, but to sound like a consumer advocate, they would prop up this. They would even go to the extent of making a bogus label and taking a photo of like this, bogus creatine that didn't contain what it should, or had a contaminant, or made a bad claim of some type. And then they would try to, say, look, we're consumer advocates, we're in your corner, and they would attack products that didn't exist. And to me, that's the ultimate cowardly kind of, they don't want to get sued by going after real products that don't work, so they're going to prop up bogus ones so they can be the white knight and save us all from this product that doesn't exist. It's just, and again, unless you're fairly well educated on what products are out there in the market, you're like, look at that label, you guys just printed that, like what on earth?
And then a few pages later they'll have the 6-page advertorial that kind of looks like an article that was written but is just a 6-page advertisement for the next product.
Exactly. So. That's actually next on my list. And they were probably worst at it, right? Now, you could say, no, it says in fine print at the bottom of every page, infotainment or advertorial. Right. And but it's indistinguishable from the rest of the magazine, or at least from an article, Yeah. Now, way back in the day in the 80s, like Flex magazine, they would write articles and then they would just start talking about weeder products, and but then you almost like take that with a grain of salt, like, oh, here's the pitch, but there was still some information that you could glean from that. But yeah, those advertorials, they go on for like 6 pages. I don't know. I don't see why the old idea of journalism can't work. And Rob and I used to wrestle with publishers with this all the time, which is, if there's an article, if I write an article on coffee, put in your coffee specialty fitness ad next to it, right? So people are, interested in coffee. Oh, look, here's an ad for it. I don't have any problem with that. But when you write an ad and you're falsely making it look like it's the content, the editorial content of the magazine, no, don't do that.
I think a lot of how all the articles are done, and this too, is that a lot of times they come to you with an idea to pitch a certain product. So the article's kind of written with this entire product in mind, where you and I are obviously much more to the opposite of that, of, oh, look at this new cool piece of research or this new study. Oh, okay. Well, it so happens that this study was on, protein at night and used a casein protein. Oh, cool. You sell a casein protein? Well, that works. I don't have any problem. And I've done this in the past too, of, linking to that product because it fits and the research matches and everything. Or in doing the opposite, a lot of times it feels like you're trying to shoehorn and do interesting things with the research to get it to match a specific product.
Yeah, like reverse engineer what's out there, or
right.
Only once or twice, believe it or not, in my life have I written ad copy. I mean, literally, here's the check, write the ad copy, and I'll tell you, the scientist in me, I could barely make myself do it. I felt dirty, I don't know, just even though it was clearly an ad and it would be something labeled as such. Like you said, you're cherry picking. And they're asking you to focus on things that they're not lies, but I always like to present, and here's the studies that say it doesn't work. You can't do that. I don't know. And again, the advertisers, it's funny to sit at a table with them because there's usually like half a dozen businessmen and advertisers, and then there's like, what this, like, you're like the token scientist, and you're always the naysayer and the guy with the caveats. Well,
just can we piss on everyone's leg?
Right. Can we say that, can we tone that down? Can we say, here are other alternatives, or products like this tend to do X, Y, or Z, but it's tough. Sometimes dose comes into play. You're like, the dose that you're putting in there, the bottle is based on price point, not on efficacy. So many things. Yeah. So it becomes quite difficult. To the point that once I was told I was a naive idealist. A recruiter told me that. That was, I won't say who, but that was actually for that big PepsiCo International job that we talked about not that long ago. I knew I was over my head, but I'm like, there's got to be some solution that's evidence-based, that at least includes that in the compromise. And she's like, oh, that's so naive. I'm like, wow. Well, then, so be it. Because I can only go so far. I mean, I can understand you got to you're not going to attack the product. You got to work with the marketers, but all they care about is bottom line and the sales numbers going up or down. And they don't even feel like that's unethical. That's the win for them, and yeah, but like you said, then you're pissing down their leg saying, well, yeah, but these parts of what you're saying are not true. Anyway.
Yeah. And even last thing on that with just some of the pre-workout stuff, it's like the number 1 and 2 are usually COPS, so cost of product sold. And then a lot of times, not so much anymore, there was the ultra concentrated pre-workout where they wanted to get it into the smallest scoop possible. So then you had a volume requirement on top of it. It's like, well, I want to put in creatine monohydrate at 5 grams. Oh, you've used up almost all of our volume already.
Yep.
It's like, well, why does it happen? Well, because the market wants to think that the smaller it is, the more concentrated it is, and you're like, oh man.
It's, I don't want to get on too much of a tangent, but of course, ads in fitness magazines are part of this sort of discussion, I guess. But yeah, it's the same thing with a lot of weight gainers. Like if it's a 900 calorie weight gainer, and they're like, oh, I'm going to spend money and get the 1,200 calorie weight gainer because I really want the extra calories, and then you look and it's 4 scoops instead of 3. Yeah, and you're like, oh. Well, you mean it's the same shit, I'm just taking more, and I paid more. Why did I pay more for the 1,200 calorie one? So I could take another scoop? I could have done that with the cheaper stuff. Anyway. Yeah, it comes in this feed-looking bag, and you open it, and there's like a laundry scoop size thing in there. You're like, holy Christ. Right, exactly. If it's not multiple scoops, that's funny, feed bag. Yep. Back to some of the things they do in magazines too. On the photo side, a lot of people may not realize this, and Rob would be a great one if we could drag him out of his cave to talk about this. But I actually, this is something I've actually seen, is sometimes if you look at somebody on the cover of a magazine, and there was a particular piece of, it's a well-known brand of exercise equipment, but the model, they would take duct tape on their back. You can't see it. And from one oblique to the other, and they would crunch down their waist, almost like you would see what they pin shirts behind models at the store, to make it look very tailored. Yeah. And they'd shave like 2-3 inches off their waist with unseen duct tape, which is posterior to the you can't see it on camera. And I'm like, oh my God, you really do that? It was funny to me. There's a lot of things. Obvious ghostwriting that's done. Rob has written stuff for athletes, and some of them, and I don't like the stereotype that athletes are dim, right? IronRadio, our whole purpose is to kind of debunk that. I mean, how many PhDs and MDs and other people, or extremely experienced, brilliant people we've had on here who are lifters. You're not dumb because you're an athlete, but you can see where some of that stereotype comes from. Rob has written, he's ghostwritten for athletes, and sometimes the articles, to anybody who's in the know, it's almost funny. Like, that guy would never use that word, Like, Rob wrote this eloquent article once, and I don't even remember this guy's name now, but he was a top national competitor. He's a light heavyweight. And, there's this eloquent article about his training philosophy and his nutrition, the usual. And, Rob did a great job. And I'm not saying it was super arcane and pedantic, but then I saw this guy get interviewed backstage. And they're like, so, tell us about your prep for the show, and he said his response was, yes, it sure is. What? No, tell us about the show. Sure. Yes, it sure is. What? Okay, moving on. Next competitor, right? Because what do you even do with that? So Rob would have to recall people, call after call, trying to clarify what you mean by these inane, obtuse comments and weave it into something that's a training and nutrition program, you know. And so I have a lot of respect for some of those, the ghostwriter editors, where, I mean, half the shit that came out in Muscle Mag International over like a 20-year period was Rob Fortney, and people don't even know, and he doesn't get a byline, you know, he doesn't.
No, there's not credited anywhere.
No, not tossed a bone at all. And you think, you know, he's making these guys look like champs, you know, I mean, intellectually. And if all they can say is, you got to want it more. Well, okay, how much protein do you eat? You got to want it more. Oh, okay, thanks for that. So ghostwriting is also a thing that I think can make you laugh. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that, Mike. Have you ever ghostwritten for anybody? Or
I almost did a couple times, and if I had 100% honest, I looked at having a ghostwriter do an ebook. So I had the interview done, I had everything done, and they sent me just a sample copy of what it would look like, and I'm like, ew, I don't write like that, you know? And at the end of the day, I just scrapped the whole thing and just said, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it, and I'm going to write it the way I want to write it, and hey, if it works, fine. If it doesn't, well, you know, I'll probably change it, but yeah, it's just... And I've had people, you know, edit a few things here and there, which is like super minor. And then I always look over the final copy. But yeah, and it's one thing to do a book and to have another writer that's helping you. So like for Unplugged, like Dr. Andy Gilpin and Brian McKenzie had, it was Phil White who helped them do the book. So they did a lot of audio, you know, talking to him, and they proofed everything. And he's credited on there, you know, as one of the writers. So it's not like they're trying to hide anything. And it turned out really, really well. I mean, you know, 95% of it is them, but having someone, you know, kind of piece stuff together, super helpful. But yeah, when other things are just entirely, the other person just wrote everything, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the flip side, to your point a little bit, is also, yeah, if you and I authentically were to write something and then the editor tweaks it and you're like, I know why you did that, but now it's wrong. You know, like they'll take a scientific premise and they'll simplify it to the point that it's actually now wrong. And, you know, and you try to reinsert that little caveat, you know, well, only in this duration or in this dose or in this population or with this piece of equipment. And yeah, and you can't include like 30 references, you know, in an article and stuff like that. And so, yeah, sometimes it works both ways. Sometimes ghostwriters are making, you know, the supposed author look great, and sometimes you get a real author and the editor's actually destroying the work, you know, unfortunately, and that's always painful, you know, if you get an editor who won't work with you, like you said, let you read it over one last time, whatever.
Yeah, and that's a fine line too, because I put stuff out that I know is correct and will target the general audience, and you've only got maybe like 2 sentences to work with, like if you're an interviewed expert or whatever. So you can't have like 17 sentences following it about, well, you know, this study was done in people only aged 30 to 35 and they only exercise twice, you know.
Oh, right, you know? Exactly. Yep.
So you get some of the people who go to the other extreme and they're like, oh, but that's, you know, not correct for this or that population. It's like, well, if I'm doing something for a fitness, you know, magazine and you're asking me about a 80-year-old person, well, they're probably not reading Men's Health. You know, that's not the target audience I was speaking to. So.
Right. Yep. Now, I mentioned photo shoots before, like the duct tape thing, and they do a bunch of funny things. But have you ever been to a photo shoot, Mike, or seen anything that was weird?
No, I haven't. But our buddy Dave Barr has been to a bunch of them when he was working for Muscle and Fitness. So I've heard interesting things. Not from Dave. Dave's a great guy, but I've heard from other people in the industry that it's crazy shit.
Yeah, you know, some things you have to forgive, like the fake 45-pound plates. You know, because I think it was Jean-Pierre Fuchs. I can't remember, but there was yeah, and he insisted on using real weights. He's got like 5 plates on the side. He tore both his quads. You know,
right off the bone.
Right off the bone. Oh, Lord. So, I mean, I understand they got to do that for a reason. So, like, if you're holding something mid-bench and you want to look like you got at least 315 on the bar, something like that. So the fake plates I can almost understand. It seems disingenuous until you realize how long and how many times they have to hold it there. It's like take after take after take, and
and a safety concern, right? Because most of those photos, like, have you ever seen a really professionally done photo in a magazine of someone, unless it's a powerlifting mag, in a squat cage? It's like, no, it's a free bench. The guy's, midpoint, like you said, with 315, and just from a pure safety standpoint, doing that over and over, if something goes wrong,
right.
It's not going to end well.
Right. Well, they gently tweak the white umbrellas and the spotlights and and all that crap. And one of the things I always thought was funny, and I don't know if they still do this. I just don't look at like bodybuilding magazines as much anymore because you just get fed up, But is the Rob would laugh about this, I'm sure. The sunglasses. Indoors, So these you get two lifters, and they're fake screaming in each other's face. They're wearing sunglasses and screaming at their training partner while they're spotting them, And I'm like, is that like adolescent macho? I don't know what that's supposed to be. But this guy is bumping into stuff. He can't see anything in these glasses. Who would wear glasses if they were really in the gym? Like, walk into my gym. That's a real gym. Guys they really don't care what they look like. They're sure as hell not wearing cool sunglasses and string tanks, and screaming in each other's faces. It's so comical and posed, and false. And frankly, tacky. It's embarrassing. I'm like, can we grow up? I don't know. This is not how these guys really lift. How they really lift, they come in with their hair all messed up and they're wearing stained gray sweatpants. That's how this really looks.
Yeah, the sunglasses thing, I just never understood that. So, especially some of the old ads from companies whose initials are MT, but we'll leave it at that.
Maybe it's supposed to draw some type of connection to California or Muscle Beach, but even a lot of that is so overplayed. Yeah. Over the last 30 years, so many of the best athletes are like East Coast or from other countries. It's not like the old Muscle Beach days where if it's California, it's somehow cool. I don't know. Or is that what they were doing with the sunglasses indoors while they're bumping into everything? I don't know.
Yeah, so, and I think there's even the perception that some of the top pros, at least in the past, were very monetarily successful and just the sort of lifestyle that's sort of portrayed in the ads. And then you meet a couple of them in person and, there's some guys at the top that are doing quite well. But I remember meeting Chris Cormier once, like probably 2010. I was in San Diego I was a member for the Race Across America, so bike race. And he was there, talked to him, super nice guy. And we just happened to be leaving at the same time. And he gets out into this, it looked like a Ford Fiesta or something that barely had four wheels on it. This huge dude. He could barely fit in the car, and it's like, like driving away. Man. I'm like, that doesn't look like that in the magazine articles.
No, right. He's going to hop in some kind of, newest model Mercedes or something.
Right.
It's funny. I guess the last thing, and I'm not going to dwell on this because we always do, but is the causality confusion. Like we just saw in that CNN piece, they're suggesting it's something, but when they say research links this with that, and obviously just because two things have some relationship doesn't mean that one causes the other, So there's always that kind of stuff going on as well. So here's my list. I just wrote it down sort of as a recap. So muscle mag and science journalism that makes us roll our eyes. 1, models holding products as if. 2, attacking fake products to look like a consumer advocate. 3, advertorials. 4, sunglasses inside while shouting at the partner. 5, duct tape waistlines. 6, painfully obvious ghostwriting for dim athletes. 7, incendiary journalism. And lastly, causality confusions. So as you're a consumer, you're reading this stuff. I don't know, maybe listeners, if you see something else you think is funny in fitness journalism, either whether it's more mainstream or it's powerlifting or bodybuilding oriented, let us know. Because that's just sort of off the top of our heads. Maybe we thought just, a little lighter conversation, even if it is a little salty, but pointing fingers at things that probably should have fingers pointed. So
Yeah, and the old ads with the before and afters, like the classic one was the Clark Bartram where he's very out of shape, and you see the 2-page thing where going left to right he's out of shape, and on the right he's like super ripped, and that was actually done in reverse.
Yep.
So he was in contest shape, and they kind of paid him to get a little bit fatter.
Yeah, Rob told me he watched that happen once, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, before after pictures in reverse order. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
All right, no, good stuff. Okay, that's going to be it this week, everybody. We have some cool guests coming down the pike, thanks to Mike, and just a variety of topics. So we'll see you in coming weeks.
See you.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the store, so we try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.